And now we wonder in this day and age how suicide is so incredibly high, how mental illness, narcissism, even homicide are still on the rise when we're quote unquote so connected, more connected than ever. Welcome to the Sound Body Initiative, a place for those who sense there's something deeper happening beneath the surface, and where lived experience meets between sound, body, and soul. Here we're talking creativity, consciousness, and real life inquiry, exploring what it actually means to be human right now. So slow down, tune in, and remember how connected we really are. Welcome back, my beautiful creatures. Thank you so much for being here with me again on the Sound Body Initiative. This week, as you can see, I have changed up my flow a little bit. Last time we connected, I was just kind of overwhelmed and adjusting to life in a new environment. And I actually decided to take my own advice and pivot a little bit and detach from what my expectations were. So I decided that I would just shoot everything here from the booth because, as you know, each one of these episodes is supported by a radio mix because I am an overachiever and I need to release 2 shows every week instead of 1. But I think it's really important for us to connect our bodies with our intellectual and emotional states. You know, the voice and the body is actually the gateway between our internal and external reality. So it's very important for us to connect with our soma, connect with our body, and actually allow what is going on in our imaginations connect with the world around us and actually create physical ripples in our environment. So if you want to embody these concepts, you can go find Sound Body Radio on YouTube and SoundCloud. But this week, the topic is really about our human connection. There's been a lot of focus around community right now. And I recently asked this question on social media, like, what would happen if social media didn't exist anymore? What would happen if the internet was obsolete and we were forced to communicate in person, you know? And I got a lot of response back of people just feeling really isolated and feeling that the social media sphere is really a poor excuse for community. And I've kind of always felt that way too, honestly. And the art of human connection has always been sort of a hot topic for me. Even as a self-proclaimed recluse, when I want to connect with others, I really prefer the human connection. So, you know, just this like medium that I'm working in now, just yes, in ways we are more connected than ever with people from all over the world. However, we are missing that human response, that human mirror through these connections. So it just had me thinking a lot about the duality between online and in-person spaces and how, you know, being connected to thousands of people virtually is just not, doesn't even come close to being connected with one person intimately. And, you know, they say we're more connected than ever online, but honestly, I call bullshit because the communication online is so dense. The amount of time that it takes for me to transmit this message to you via online communication, I mean, in all honesty, it takes about 24 to 48 hours. You know, it's the process of actually doing the production, doing the filming, and then doing the editing, doing the uploading and the scheduling. And by the time that these words come out of my mouth, it's already been 2 days since that message comes to you. And it's interesting because, again, it can reach thousands and thousands of people, but we are losing something in the feedback that we get from our human connection. And so what is really fast and what is really connected about that? But I've always had this hard time in the online space because it is so dense, it is so slow, and it can feel hollow at times. And I'm trying to loosen my grip of that duality. I'm not seeing one as bad versus good, and I'm trying to exist between this field, but I can't help but miss the days when friends wanted to say hello, they would just pick up the phone and call. When somebody would just stop by because they're in your neck of the woods, when somebody would send a physical letter you could hold and touch and smell in your hands, receiving that energy that that person has just given to you. There is a certain longing that I think a lot of us are experiencing in that human connection because the consensus is that a lot of the online space feels hollow. They say it's a poor excuse for human connection and real community. And we're seeing this in the way that people gather in their physical spaces. We're kind of being trained and conditioned to be really disconnected from one another and self-conscious and, to be honest, kind of weird. Like, we used to say hello to our neighbors. We used to smile at strangers in the street, but now we can't even say excuse me when we side check somebody walking down a busy sidewalk. It's more than just about having manners. It's the acknowledgement of another human being. It is the tribal sense of safety that we have from looking in the eyes of another soul, the sense of safety we get from acknowledging who is in our surroundings, who is there to help us, and who might be there to harm us. And now we wonder in this day and age how suicide is so incredibly high, how mental illness, narcissism, even homicide are still on the rise when we're quote unquote so connected, more connected than ever. You know that even when you're face to face in conversation with somebody, just the presence of a cell phone or a device diminishes and lessens the intention and the depth of that interaction by something like 24%. So I think that speaks a lot to how these devices are not actually making us more connected. They're making us weird and disconnected and like kind of uneasy and uncomfortable. So again, it's an interesting medium. It's an interesting space to exist here. It's almost like we're imprinting ourselves into some other dimension. So there's something very inhuman about the way that we interact with these devices and with this three-dimensional reality in the worldwide web, so to speak. We see how people are left chasing dopamine hits on the internet while becoming increasingly desensitized to human suffering and human connection. Deranged activity that goes on the internet is truly unsettling. We can talk about that in another episode. But, and we can tell ourselves like, oh, we're changing it. We're putting good information out there. We're influencing the algorithm in a positive way. But in reality, people will never feel as connected as the human experience bonds us. Like people will never have that level of empathetic discernment as they will have as being in physical contact with somebody. So that's my problem with these online spaces. They're a lazy excuse for community. I think it's a medium for art, it's a medium for sharing information, but people have become so fucking lazy now that they would rather stay at home on their couches and watch a video or scroll through hours of dopamine hits or, listen to a pre-recorded set somewhere in their home rather than leave their house and go interact with humans. And it might not even be an instance of laziness. I think it's really an instance of insecurity and feeling disconnected. People don't know how to behave around other human beings anymore. We see that on the dance floor. People don't dance anymore. There's like the under 30 crowd, they don't dance. They go out and they go like this. They bob their heads and they look around and they check their phones, or they kind of just, they kind of stand around. There's a lot of conversation happening rather than nonverbal human engagement with one another. So sure, we support each other in other ways through this online space, mostly in commerce. We support each other's projects and businesses, and most of all, we support the monolithic meta corporations that make billions, if not trillions of dollars off of paid ads that are targeted towards us, selling our personal information that we have been hooked onto these platforms with, consenting, right? So while we think we're building our communities here in this online space, we're actually being used to build war machines that take advantage of our very human existence. And perhaps what got us here was the fact that our communities had been broken for so long. Our communities, our families, our parents, they weren't supporting us enough that we felt like we could be there with them. So it left us to leave seeking like-minded individuals from other parts of the world, which is a beautiful thing, isn't it? But while, yes, we're sharing ideas and support and making new connections with people we would have otherwise never met, it all still feels so surface level to me. Because we're at a point in our culture that we need to take a look deeper. We need to start to construct something that's actually going to last into our future generation. Will we really just keep, as creators, I'm asking you, are we really going to just keep building up another corporation that controls information for a subpar expression of human connection? Or will we begin to see a resurgence of face-to-face interactions, of heart-to-heart experiences, with the rate of narcissistic traits characterized by the inability to have empathy for another human being? It went from something like 16 or 20% in the 80s and 90s to nearly 70% of the population today. 70% of the population today exhibits some form of narcissistic tendencies. The inability to have empathy for another human being. I think that states the obvious. And the scary part is that the less and less we use these innate abilities, these characteristics that have been encoded in our DNA, that we have genetically been designed to do, to recognize other human beings, to pick up on their senses, the less that we use those capacities, the less they will be expressed in our DNA and no longer passed down to our future generations. So perhaps that makes sense why we've gone from 20% to 70% of a narcissistic population in the last 30 years. Perhaps it's the disconnect of the AI and the technology and the lack of actual human interaction. Or perhaps it's the fact that these things aren't actually being expressed in our genetics anymore. And it's as if these social platforms, these digital communities, it's like they're keeping us trapped in this dense reality. Like I said, it's like this weird space where we're leaving these imprints on the 3D. But I try to see both sides of the story. So maybe this is more good than bad, or maybe it's neither. Perhaps it's just, learning to let go of either side of the coin. Perhaps this is the integration, the 4D that no one really talks about. Nobody ever talks about this 4D. Everybody's always talking about the 3D and the 5D. But what happens in the space between, right? Perhaps this is the 4D, the fourth dimension, the melting pot, the place where we sort out the type of reality that we're going to participate in. And perhaps this is what the spiritual war looks like. Perhaps it is the battle of our humanity, our soul connection with one another, our soul connection with nature, our soul connection with our infinite source. So I've been reflecting on the duality of our nature and, the way that it keeps us from manifesting. Everything's either good or bad, or positive or negative. And yes, everything has a positive and negative polarity because, this is a vibrational universe. But the constructs that we create in our mind, they tie us to one thing or the other. And it leaves no space for the integration, the true present moment. When we're constantly focusing on this or that, needing to choose a side, thinking we better do this, otherwise that will happen. Or if we do that, then we can't have this. And I think that's kind of where my mind has been with this whole online community thing for a long time. And I'm trying to find the balance because in doing that, it really never allows me to be in the present moment. And the present moment that we're in right now is that we're figuring shit out. We are at a place where we need to share information at extremely fast rates. Oh my gosh, I can't talk. At extremely fast rates, because information has been hidden from us for so long. It has been suppressed for so long that we do need to broadcast these transmissions all over the world as quickly as we human possibly can. And we're at a space where we need to learn what it feels like to be in community again. We need to feel what it's like to have safety from the people around us. I was having a conversation about community the other day with a couple other community activators. And, what it had me realize is that a lot of people who are operating in these, or rather who are trying to activate our culture back into a space of human connection, organizing in-person activities and things like that, they end up getting really burnt out. And I've been in that place before because I really think that a lot of our society doesn't know how to behave in community. And so that leaves me with a question: what is community? And to me, community is contribution. Community is it's like a potluck. It's like you are invited somewhere, you receive an invitation, and you bring a dish, you bring something to drink, but everything runs a lot smoother and is a lot less stressful whenever everybody is contributing. So I think that's the balance we're finding in these community spaces right now. We're letting go of the duality and discovering how we can best contribute to sustain a more harmonious environment for us all, while using discernment to decide how we will engage in our surroundings at any given time. You know, this very interesting thing happens when we observe one another in person. You've heard about the law of the observer, you know, what you seek, ye shall find, because we have this ability as human beings to influence reality through our perception. I keep moving this up and down. But there's, oh my gosh. And because we are so intrinsically attuned to our environments and to one another, there's another very interesting thing that happens on a subconscious level when we observe one another. We subconsciously read the subconscious response from the person who's observing us using our proprioceptive nervous system. And I want to get this right for you because I mentioned this on a previous episode and I completely butchered the information. But our proprioception is the sense of self, movement, force, and body position. We have at least 5 or 6 known pre-conscious monitors that make up this part of our nervous system. And so these proprioceptors are all over our body. And these signals are transmitted subconsciously through our nervous systems, where they're integrated with other information from other sensory systems. And combined, this creates our overall representation of the self and where we exist, what our place is in any given space and time. So without this human interaction, we're not actually getting to use these proprioceptive sensors that are constantly receiving information from one another. And that is so detrimental to us because it's not allowing us the very deep awareness that comes along with observing somebody, observing you and what you find out about yourself internally. So because we are covered in these proprioceptive receptors, we're constantly receiving information from our external environments without actually being consciously focused or consciously aware of these things. So that's why it is so detrimental for us to judge or hold disdain for others, especially for our children, because we are actually affirming through our micro expressions that there is something wrong with the other person, subconsciously validating to them that they are less than or broken. And because we learn about ourselves through this simple act of being observed. So people say they want to get to know themselves, they want to heal, they want to do all this shadow work and get to know what's going on their inside. Yet they're avoiding the very thing that will shed light on that internal unknowing. Because when we observe without judgment, with simple loving awareness, we offer a state of neutrality. We allow the other person to see the truth of themselves through the divine mirror of our simple human presence. And perhaps it is the layers of trauma and disdain and judgment that we have carried with us as a species that have innately pushed us away from our human connection and the pain that we felt subconsciously, always receiving that input that something was wrong with us. When deep down, we know we were born with the knowing that we are perfect as this natural part of human expression, as this natural expression of source creation, right? So therein lies the duality. Therein lies our nature of seeking both black and white, both sides of the story. And I think this is part of the integration process, the nature of seeing both black and white, seeing both sides of the story. And we're at a point now where we must choose how we want to create, how to show up in this world, in this present moment. We must choose how we want to create, to be present and aware based on harmonic resonance, or to be pulled in different directions based on convenience. I heard an interesting question today. And the question was, is leadership a role of service or a role of privilege? And I thought, well, if you're doing it right, then you realize it is a privilege to be of service to your community. And most people who are engaging with us here online, they are craving human connection. They are craving something more. And unless we do something as leaders to cultivate that human connection, then there are so many out there who are just going to be pulled in every direction, searching for the next hit. So the question I leave you with as conscious creators, as leaders who are building community, who are building a future, this question is for you. Are you building in service to your own needs? Or are you building in service to the needs of others? And when you reap the rewards of all that you've built, will there be a community surrounding you to share it with? I think it was Maya Angelou who said, she said, I've learned that people will forget what you said, forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. So with that, my friends, keep shining, keep serving, keep building, keep connecting. And until next time, keep up the light.
If you're listening to this broadcast, it means that you are a leader for a new way of living as humans. Hitting follow and subscribe doesn't just support me as an independent, but it supports our collective evolution, because the more people that tune into this content, the more it can reach to broaden our awareness and expand conscious thought. Plus, don't forget to integrate this week's music medicine into your practice, because the body is the gateway to your subconscious. You can find me on YouTube at JRio Music or SoundCloud at Jessica Rio Music, or simply by searching Sound Body Radio. If you love listening and tuning in, please reach out to me on Instagram to share your thoughts at Sound Body Initiative, and let me know what topics you want to expand upon in the next show. So remember, this isn't just a podcast. This is a transmission and a gateway to your own higher calling.